Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source packed show. I know we say that every week. Every week it is packed. This week it's really packed. We've got the orange and white game. We've got Jarnell Stokes' decision, declaration for the NBA draft. We have a segment where we're going to do a little talk about Bobby Denton, remembering him. And did I mention orange and white game? Tons of UT football today. Let's just go ahead and get it started. First segment brought to you by my good friends at Nova Copy. Located right here in Knoxville, they have all the backing and power of a national company. Matter of fact, Nova Copy already has 5 Tennessee locations, and they're expanding quickly to meet a growing customer base. Thanks to you, you guys are helping them grow, as a matter of fact. I appreciate that. Trust me, folks, Nova Copy can be a valuable asset to your company, whether it's a big company or a small company. Call Nova Copy. Benny Malakote and his team will take good care of you. All right. Want to welcome in the panel for today. Well, part of the panel for today. We've got a lot of guys moving in and out. We've got 4 more guests on this show. Right over here, Jimmy Himes, of course, the host of Sports Talk on the Sports Animal, Monday through Friday. Right here from the Knoxville News Sentinel, where you do a freelance column, Bob Hodge. And right here where you do columns every week. That's Mike Strange from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Also make appearances on the Sports Page radio show. Yep. All right, guys. Offense put up a lot of big plays in yesterday's scrimmage. Final score 129-100 for those of you that want to try and decipher that. Offense put up a lot of big plays, but it was a scrimmage. So you walk away saying, how much of that was the product of a really sharp offense and how much was the product of a really crummy defense? Butch Jones seemed to put a lot of it on a crummy defense last night. Where do you put it? It's a scrimmage. How can you tell? Jimmy, I'll start with you. Offense or defense?
Pretty crummy defense. What I do when I watch scrimmages or I watch practices, I try to look for plays. Players, not plays. And I thought there were several people that looked really good. I thought the quarterbacks at different times looked good. I thought Josh Malone looked good. Jalen Hurd looked good. There were different people that looked pretty good, but still the defense was, they lacked speed. We've talked about that for several years. They missed Brian Randolph. They didn't have A.J. Johnson on the field much. Travaris Salisbury, a starter at defensive tackle, is going to be there. But they need more help coming in, and Butch Jones talked about that. He said of 18 guys coming in the summer, he said he thought it was 16 on defense. I actually think it's 14, but he may try 2 more on defense. So I think that the defense needs a lot of help going forward.
And what's this? The first unit defense didn't look that bad right off the bat. The first 3 or 4 series, I think they only gave up 1 field goal, but then everything kind of went up. But that also displays your lack of depth once again, that your starting group looked okay to start out, and then it went south too. Bob, game like that, how much do you take away from this?
Well, I think the big thing you take away is they don't tackle very well. And that's something that is hard to correct. I mean, you're sitting there and you can talk about, well, the defense was limited, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. But when you don't tackle well, it doesn't matter what scheme you're running. It don't matter what packages you're running. When you don't tackle well, your defense ain't going to be very good, and I think that is a huge concern.
And for our viewers out there wondering, that is a Carnes K. So no emails to me about Kentucky fans on my show. We've gotten them before. Mike Strange, your takeaway from yesterday's scrimmage.
I'm going to be the glass half full guy and say that defense is going to look a lot different on August 31st. A.J. Johnson didn't play much. Jimmy mentioned Brian Randolph didn't play. I got a feeling somebody that's not on campus yet might be the starting safety next to Randolph. But what about the cornerbacks? And I wonder, can Josh Malone play defense? Have they thought about that?
Can he do the Carl Pickens thing and go both ways? Overall, this team more experience in Butch Jones' system. You've added talent. I mean, mentioned Malone, Hurd. Those are guys who, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but you're starting to see some bodies over there that could have played, that look like the bodies that would have played in the 90s. It's been a while since you've seen guys popping up like that. But you look at the influx of talent. Is this team, do you see a step forward in terms of, I'm not saying record, but in terms of, all right, I see differences from last year to this year. Are you seeing growth there, or is it too early to tell?
Well, I think athletically they are better, in particular of the skill positions. However, as we all know in this league, you have to be pretty good at the line of scrimmage to win. You're losing 182 starts on your offensive line, you're returning 6. You're losing 101 starts on your defensive line, you're returning 8. That's a problem. So on the offensive line, no, they don't look as good as they did a year ago, but at a lot of other positions. At receiver, I think Hurt at running back. I think they've got some pretty good athletes on defense. So athletically, I think they're going to be better, but the line of scrimmage is going to be the problem.
And John, I think you said the key thing, better, but that doesn't necessarily mean record. I think they can be a much better team athletically and have a worse record than they did last year. I mean, it's young players. I think that's a real possibility for this team.
I think the hardest thing to tell when you watch a game like that, a scrimmage, is what the guys on the offensive defensive line are doing. We tend to watch the ball and the skill players. And as Jimmy said, and Bob said, the guys, those guys in the trenches are maybe the most important of all.
You know, and I do want to point out again, people need to remember this. 125, and I know most of you do, but for those who don't, 125 schools in Division I football, FBS football. Tennessee is the only one out of those 125 to replace its entire offensive line, which means by default, it's also the only school having to replace its entire offensive and defensive lines. That's something that you just can't wash over that. I know that I heard you had a great soundbite from Butch Jones that you used yesterday in your pregame show, him saying that he would rather have great running back with an average offensive line than vice versa. He may need that this year.
Yeah.
He may need that.
That's probably why I said that this year.
That's right. Going into yesterday, I think a lot of folks expected to see Riley Ferguson and Justin Worley compete for the starting job. It sounded like they were pulling away a little bit. But Josh Dobbs had the big day. Now, he had the long run, which was nice run, very nice run, also aided by some horrific tackling on that long run. Still, did he play himself back into the mix? And here's the thing. We were looking at how many snaps they got in some of these scrimmages. Butch Jones said all along it's a 3-man race, or all his guys are equal or whatever. I don't think it's a 4-man race. Is Dobbs now back to the forefront in people's minds after yesterday's performance?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he's 6 out of 9 for 199 yards. He scored on that run. There were some bad tackling. He threw the ball with effectiveness, and that has been the concern earlier. He wasn't consistent with his accuracy. He threw it pretty well yesterday. I think he did play his way in. The guy that didn't play as well to me was Riley Ferguson, who was supposed to be neck and neck with Worley. So I think Dobbs has played his way right back into it.
And one thing about the quarterbacks yesterday, Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dobbs was pretty much going against the number 2 defense. Riley Ferguson was going against the number 1 defense most of the day.
And
a little tougher.
He got hit several times, too.
He did.
Congratulations on having the better spring.
Yeah,
I just think that conversation, the question you just asked, will be about the same question that's being asked the last week of August.
Who's the guy?
Who's the guy? I just don't think until you start playing games, I just don't think they're going to be able to answer it.
That's too bad because we're going to ask that very question a little bit later. All right. I did want to say this before we catch a break. Big attendance yesterday. Nearly 70,000. Second largest crowd ever for a spring game at UT. And the biggest, they made a huge concentrated marketing push to snap the Guinness Book of World Records back in '86. There was no such push this year. I think the fan base deserves a lot of credit. They've been through a lot of nonsense over the last few years. And for them to show, it's clear you have a large portion of this fan base that is believing in what Butch Jones is doing, and they showed it by showing up yesterday. I think they deserve a hand for that. All right, give them a hand, Bob. Very good. Plenty more of the orange and white game talk to come. Lots more guests coming up. Mark Pankratz is back to talk about Jarnell Stokes' decision to leave UT early, and now a little something extra. Hey, it's Orange and White Week. Sterling, have it.